Marisol Reyes lasted 3 nights at her new job before the whispers began. The George A. Strohmeyer Memorial Library squatted at the edge of downtown Detroit like an Art Deco mausoleum, all limestone gargoyles and soot-stained columns. The city had long since built newer branches with touchscreen kiosks and fluorescent smiles, but the Strohmeyer remained open 24 hours for scholars and shift workers, as its brass plaque boasted. No one fought for the night shift. The pay differential was small, the public smaller. Marisol, fresh out of Wayne State's Library Sciences program and desperate for health insurance, accepted without a second thought. She spent the first 2 nights shelving books and chasing raccoons out of the alley book drop. On the third, just past 2 a.m., the circulation desk computer pinged, informing her that a volume had been marked Return. She frowned. No one had entered the building for hours. The camera feed showed the lobby empty, doors locked. Yet the system insisted the practical Millwright's pocket guide had been scanned in. Marisol stepped from behind the desk, shoes echoing on the mosaic floor. The guide lay on the returns cart, maroon cloth binding, gold leaf gears on its cover. A slip of paper protruded like a white tongue. Overdue 30,472 days. Borrower, Garviz Silas C. Marisol's breath fogged in the stale air. 30,000 days. 83 years. She ran a fingertip over the due date, stamped June 6, 1940. Somebody's idea of a prank, she muttered, sliding the book back onto the cart. A man cleared his throat. She spun. The lobby that a moment ago had stood empty now contained a figure in a charcoal suit, crisp, despite fashion's 6 decades dead. His tie clip shimmered with a tiny Ford emblem. Frost rhymed the marble around his shoes, as though he had carried winter in with him. "Miss Reyes." His voice was low, leaning toward gravel. "I require assistance." "Sir, the library's closed." Her throat worked. "How did you get in?" He strode forward, giving off an odor like machine oil and lilacs. "One of your predecessors allowed me borrowing privileges. I've returned my handbook. I intend to check out new material." Marisol's hand darted to the panic button beneath the desk, but her palm froze a centimeter shy, tingling with pins and needles. At that moment she realized the man cast no reflection in the plate glass foyer. She swallowed. "Silas Garvey?" His lips curled. "Then the card catalogue still remembers me." Every Detroiter who paid attention in high school history had heard the name. Garvey Iron Works, Garvey Rail and Foundry, Garvey Realty all collapsed in the summer of 1940 after a scandal involving union busting, firebombs, and missing pensions. Rumor claimed Garvey himself vanished the night federal marshals came for him, leaving a hollow empire behind. "I'm the night librarian," Marisol managed. "Our holdings are for living patrons." "Let me assist your understanding." Garvey tapped the guidebook on the cart. Its pages riffled, scattering brown petals of age. Somewhere deep in the library, a clock that had not worked in 40 years began to tick. "I discovered, decades ago, that the Strohmeyer binds its borrowers by contract more ancient than any man-written law. This place was built on ground purchased from the Potawatomi, who warned its first custodian the dead would keep what the living neglected. A book unreturned becomes a beacon. At 30 years overdue, it calls a whisper. At 50, an echo. At 75, a door," Marisol said, comprehension blossoming like icy flowers on glass. Garvey smiled, terrible and pleased. "And I have stepped through. But the handbook is only a start. I shall require newer texts, corporate codes, financial strategies, computer science. I intend to reclaim what was mine and more." "You can't check anything out," she half laughed, half gasped. "You don't have corporeality. A bank's not going to take orders from a ghost." Did Henry Ford require corporeality once his principles infected every assembly line? Garvey's eyes glinted orange like the coals of blast furnaces. "Ideas have calves stronger than flesh. I need information, a conduit and an executor in the breathing world. You, Miss Reyes." The panic button tingled again, numbness creeping up her arm. Garvey had not moved, yet he seemed to loom taller, casting a shadow that swallowed the desk. "I won't help you." "You already have." He raised a pale finger. The circulation terminal flickered, disgorging lists of account numbers. "Your credentials unlocked the catalogue. All I need is for you to carry these volumes outside before dawn under your name. Once free of the library's wards, nothing will bar me from every ledger in Detroit." He paused. "Decline, and you will learn what iron does to mortal lungs when heated beyond white." Marisol thought of the security guards, 2 retirees who made rounds with coffee and podcasts due in an hour. She thought of the silence beyond the walls, how no one walked Grand River Avenue at 3 a.m. She thought, too, of the Overdue guidebook, of the ledger marking the dead. If one book called a spirit, what would dozens do? She forced herself to meet his furnace eyes. "Let me process your request," she said evenly. "Please wait in the reading room." Garvey inclined his head, a baron granting reprieve. He turned, strides eerily silent over marble. Frost melted where his shoes passed, leaving tiny puddles that steamed. Marisol watched until he disappeared between towering biography stacks. Then she ran, not for the panic button, now useless, but for the archive basement. The Stromia's sublevels smelled of dust and baptismal water. Fuses hummed in cloth-wrapped wires. Marisol yanked open a steel door labeled Ledger Room, staff only, and flicked on the cage light. Rows of unwieldy books slept on shelves, teal, burgundy, sea green, each an era's circulation log. On her first tour, the day librarian had shrugged at them. "We keep meaning to digitize," he said, "but they're half illegible, and half of those cards went missing in the 70S. Waste of $1,000. Marisol scanned spines until she found 193919141 and slid it free. Dust motes whirled. She opened to June 6, 1940. Borrower: Garvey Silas C. Item: The Practical Millwright's Pocket Guide. Checkout clerk: Ruth B. Harris, night aide. Return date: next to the entry, someone had drawn a charcoal X that looked disturbingly like crossed bones. Marisol flipped forward, more blank return dates. X's black as strikes on a union ledger. Auto workers, riveters, seamstresses, a school teacher named Annabelle Knox. Over 200 names in that window alone. The missing cards from the 70S, she realized, were no accident. Someone had tried to erase the overdue trail. Her skin prickled. If those books came back, if those ghosts did, Garvey would have an army. She needed help, but who could believe her before sunrise? The guards would laugh. Police would detain her for narcotics testing. She chewed her lip, thinking of the school teacher. The name sounded faintly familiar. Ms. Knox. There was an Annabelle Knox Elementary 2 miles north. Ms. Knox, Annabelle. Marisol wrote on a scrap. She added, Carver J. Riveter. Johnson, Leah, seamstress. She kept jotting until she had 6 names. Then she returned upstairs, ledger hugged to her chest like a shield of papery armor. The reading room chandeliers glowed, though she had left them off. Garvey lounged in a leather wingback by the marble fireplace, surrounded by chosen texts, corporate mergers and acquisitions, Python for finance, a half-dozen others stacked like offerings. He smiled when he saw the ledger in her arms. Wise girl. Sobriety suits you better than defiance. I want to understand the terms. She set the ledger on a table where lamplight illuminated its fragile pages. This is the contract you mentioned, right? The dead bound by overdue status. Garvey rose. Indeed. A simple covenant. Return what you borrow, or your soul remains pledged to the house that holds it. How do returns happen if the borrowers... Gone. They cannot without intercession. A librarian, for instance, may process the item and nullify the bond. That is why I ensured this copy found its way to your cart. He tapped the millwright's guide. You, Miss Reyes, are my intercessor. And if a book is lost? Garvey's gaze cooled. Then the debt persists eternally. Marisol opened the ledger. "Would you mind showing me the entry for your guide? I want to confirm something." He swept forward. As his spectral hand hovered above the yellowed page, Marisol whispered, "Ruth B. Harris." Garvey's fingers hesitated. A soft knock sounded behind them. They turned. A figure in a tweed skirt and round spectacles stood at the threshold, hair pinned in 1,940 S-waves. She clutched a leather purse and looked bewildered but solid, more flesh than mist. "I heard my name," she said, voice quavering. Marisol's heart hammered. "Mrs. Harris?" "Yes. Where is the front desk? Mr. Garvey, you still here?" I don't feel well." Garvey snarled. Flame flickered in his eyes. "You dare summon her?" Marisol forced calm. "The ledger also binds clerks. You said it yourself. If their name witnesses an overdue book, they're tethered." She had tested a theory. Speak a name once recorded in the stacks and the archive's magic, raw and literal, would call it forth. Harris had been the easiest. She'd signed Garvey's slip. Garvey's form quivered, smoke seeping from his sleeves. "You see, sir," Marisol continued, "if I can bring one clerk, I can bring more. And borrowers too, hundreds." "You would flood these halls with phantoms? You cannot control them." "Maybe not. But I don't think they'll let you march out with their second chance at peace." Garvey advanced a step, frost crawling over the Persian rug. "I forged empires from molten ore and immigrant sweat. Do you think a gaggle of stray wraiths frightens me?" "Actually," Marisol said, voice breaking a little, "yes." She shouted, "Annabelle Knox!" A wind exploded through the reading room. Books cascaded from shelves. A woman in a calico dress appeared, chalk dust on her fingers. She blinked at the chandelier, confusion melting to stern authority. "Young lady," she said to Marisol, "explain this disruption at once." Before Marisol could, another presence materialized. Broad-shouldered Jacob Carver in grease-stained overalls. Then delicate Leah Johnson with threaded needles glinting in her bun. Ghost after ghost crowded the carpet, each more bewildered than the last. Garvey retreated until frost slicked the walls behind him. The chandelier flickered, bulbs bursting in staccato pops. "Enough!" he roared. "You are mine, all of you. I financed your wages, fed your children. Without my factories, your lineage would shiver unclothed." Carver stepped forward, jaw set. "Without your factories, my brother might still breathe. He died on your line, 12-hour shift, no overtime." Annabelle Knox lifted her chin. "You kept half my students working nights, too tired to learn. You owe a debt, sir." The ghosts pressed closer, a murmuring tide. Marisol raised her voice. "Listen, returning your books will free you. Hand me your volumes, we'll check them in. You can move on." Confusion rippled over ethereal faces. Then Miss Knox nodded once. "I borrowed the Canterbury Tales, 1938, she said officiously, as if reciting roll call. "English translation, Coghill edition." A thump sounded from a distant stack. Seconds later, the book slid across the floor, as though pushed by invisible hands, and halted at Marisol's feet. Carver called his technical manual next. Johnson, a volume on haute couture. Each title materialized, the library spitting them forth like seeds. Marisol hurried to the circulation desk, hands shaking, and began scanning. The system accepted the barcodes, even those that predated barcodes by half a century. With each successful beep, a ghost brightened, lines sharpening, then softened to translucence before dissolving in a puff of silver dust. The dust drifted upward, disappearing into the gloom beyond the skylight. Garvey howled. The remaining spirits circled him, faces stern, demanding restitution. "You would extinguish yourselves," he snarled. "Trade eternity for oblivion, fools. I offer dominion. Dominion is what killed us," Leah Johnson whispered. The lobby shook. Marble cracked underfoot. A distant siren wailed outside as if the city felt its own foundations scream. Garvey's eyes fixed on Marisol. Twins slag pits. "Intercessor, rescind this?" "I command you." Marisol's thumb hovered over the return key for another name. Harris. Ruth B. Her fingers stabbed downward. Miss Harris exhaled a sigh that smelled of cold perfume. "I always thought librarianship would be quiet," she said, smiling ruefully at Marisol. "Thank you, dear." Then she, too, drifted into silver. Garvey staggered. Black smoke vented from cracks in his suit. "You cannot erase me. I am the iron in every bridge, the carbon in every frame. Detroit is my body." And yet he flickered. With each patron released, part of the covenant unraveled, threads sizzling like severed wires. Marisol saw an opportunity. "Mr. Garvey," she said clearly, "your manual is returned and checked in. Your debt is cleared. You no longer have claim to this place." For one heartbeat he solidified, eyes wild. Then ice spiderwebbed across his chest, locking him. He tried to step forward, but his shoes froze to the cracked marble. A hush fell. The remaining ghosts stared. It dawned on them that the tyrant was, at last, overdue. Marisol's voice shook but held. "We have one item still out, the Practical Millwright's Pocket Guide. Returned? Yes. Processed? Yes. Borrower's account? Closed." She pressed finalize. The circulation monitor flashed green. A gust swept the room, scattering ash from the fireplace. Garvey's form shattered. First his shoulders, then torso, limbs fracturing into iron filings that whirled in a cyclone above the reading table. An echo of a scream reverberated in the high dome, fading with the filings until nothing remained but the smell of scorched gear oil. Silence, thick as archival dust. One by one the remaining ghosts stepped forward. Some carried books they had snatched during the chaos. Others, empty-handed, merely recited a title and year. Marisol scanned and stamped, scanning, stamping, her motions gaining confidence. Each release lightened the air. The cracked marble knit itself, frost melted, electricity steadied. By the time the security guards unlocked the east door at 6, the last silver motes had vanished near the skylight. And the only evidence of catastrophe was a pile of thawing water droplets and the lingering fragrance of lilacs. The city sunrise spilled copper over the Art Deco gargoyles. Inside, Officer Daniels of DPD wrapped up his questions, scribbled in a notebook already smudged from overnight calls. The guards had found Marisol alone, no sign of intruders, though dozens of ancient volumes lay newly checked in. "You're telling me somebody broke in, threatened you, then disappeared?" he said. "Not exactly broke in, no." Marisol smiled faintly. "And he's not coming back." Daniels sighed. "You pushed the silent alarm, Miss Reyes. Protocol says we review the cameras. Feel free, but the power flickered. I'm not sure how much you'll see." She suspected the footage would show books flying of their own accord, static fizzing into shapes. It would end up blamed on glitches, or maybe go viral as another Detroit ghost reel. People would believe what they liked. "Maintenance is mad about the marble," Daniels added, gesturing to faint hairline cracks. "Tell them it can be credited to historical authenticity," Marisol said. The officer shook his head, signed a report, and left. The guards followed to smoke on the steps. Marisol was alone again, but not quite. She felt the hush of the library, deeper yet lighter, as though a migraine had lifted after decades. The air tasted normal, paper, varnish, no engine oil. She climbed the spiral stairs to the fourth-floor carrels. The morning sun lanced through stained glass, painting checkered rainbows across shelves. On a windowsill sat a final book, its spine cracked but present. Practical Archival Conservation, 1962. There was no checkout slip. Perhaps it had never left the building. Still, Marisol opened it and read a penciled note on the title page. "For the keepers of memory, so that the lost might rest, and tyrants be unmade. Burrow has, Marisol closed the book, hugging it to her chest the way she had clutched the ledger. She walked back toward the circulation desk, feet crunching softly on mica dust no one else would notice. The computer chimed a new notification. She glanced at the screen. One item overdue, 65 years. Introduction to Jazz Improvisation. Borrower, Collins, Miles J. She grinned. "Mr. Collins," she whispered to the silent stacks. "Your book's ready whenever you are." Somewhere in the library, a trumpet played the first tentative notes of a blues phrase, bright and mournful, echoing between the old walls like sunrise.